The champagne glass slipped from my mother's hand, shattering across the marble floor of the plaza's grand ballroom. But it wasn't an accident. She had thrown it at me, in front of 300 guests at their 35th wedding anniversary gala. "You are dead to this family, Sophia," she hissed, her face contorted with a rage I had never seen before. "From this moment forward, you are not my daughter." The orchestra had stopped playing. Every eye in that glittering room was fixed on us. My father stood beside her, his jaw clenched, saying nothing. My brother Derek smirked from behind his wine glass. My sister Melissa clutched her fiancé's arm, her eyes gleaming with something that looked almost like satisfaction. I stood there in my simple Armani dress, champagne dripping from my hair, and felt something inside me finally irrevocably break. Not my heart. That had broken years ago. This was different. This was the last thread of hope that had kept me tied to these people snapping cleanly in two. But before I tell you what happened next, before I tell you how that night changed everything, I need you to understand something. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever been the one who gave everything and received nothing in return, then this story is for you. Hit that like button, subscribe to hear how this ends, and drop a comment telling me if you've ever felt like the black sheep of your family. Because what I'm about to share might just change how you see your own worth. Now let me take you back to where it all began. I was born Sophia Marie Williams on a cold February morning in Greenwich, Connecticut. The labor was difficult, lasting 18 hours, and my mother never let me forget it. She would mention it at odd times, usually when I had disappointed her in some way. 18 hours of agony to bring you into this world, and this is how you repay me. From my earliest memories, I understood that I was different from my siblings in ways that mattered to my family. Derek, 3 years older, was bold and charismatic. Even as a child, he commanded attention when he walked into a room. He was the kind of boy who became captain of every sports team, president of student council, the one all the parents pointed to as an example of what their children should aspire to be. Melissa, 2 years younger than me, was born beautiful. I'm not being cruel or self-deprecating. She simply was. Even as a baby, people would stop my mother on the street to coo over her perfect features, her angel blonde hair, her enormous blue eyes. As she grew, that beauty only intensified, and my mother recognized it as the valuable commodity it was. Melissa would never need to work, my mother would say. She would marry well. And then there was me, Sophia. Average height, average looks, brown hair that wouldn't hold a curl, a tendency to bite my nails when I was nervous, and an unfortunate habit of asking too many questions. I was the child who took apart the toaster when I was 6 because I wanted to understand how it worked. The child who spent hours in the library reading books about space and computers instead of playing with dolls. The child who corrected my father's math at the dinner table when I was 8 and earned myself a week of silent treatment for embarrassing him. I learned early to keep my interests to myself. But I couldn't help being curious, being driven, being hungry for knowledge in a way that made my family uncomfortable. The first real crack in my relationship with my family happened when I was 14. It was the Connecticut State Science Fair, and I had spent 6 months building a program that could predict weather patterns using historical data and machine learning algorithms. It was rudimentary by today's standards, but for a 14-year-old in 2005, it was impressive enough to win first place at the regional level and qualify for states. The state competition was on a Saturday in Hartford. It was also the day of Derek's big lacrosse game, the championship that would determine if his team went to nationals. My parents promised they would come to Hartford in the morning for my presentation, then drive to Derek's game in the afternoon. They swore they wouldn't miss either event. The morning of the competition, I woke up at 5 a.m. I was so nervous I threw up twice before we left. My presentation was scheduled for 10 a.m., and we needed to be there by 8 for setup. At 7:30, my mother came into my room. She was still in her bathrobe, her face tight with stress. "Sophia, we have a problem," she said. "Derek's coach just called. They moved the game up to noon because of weather predictions. We need to leave for the game by 10:30 at the latest." I felt my stomach drop. "But my presentation is at 10. You said you'd be there." "I know, sweetheart, but Derek's game is important. This could determine his entire athletic future. College scouts are going to be there. This could determine my future too," I said quietly. "I've been working on this for 6 months. My mother's expression hardened. "Sophia, don't be selfish. Derek's opportunities are on the line here. You're competing in a science fair. It's not the same thing." "Why not?" "Because that's just not how the world works. Derek has a real shot at something here. This science thing is nice, but it's not going to change your life. Now get dressed. We're leaving in 20 minutes. My father didn't even argue. He simply went along with whatever my mother decided. That was always his way. Strong and decisive in business, completely passive at home. In the end, they compromised. My father would take me to Hartford and stay for my presentation, then leave immediately to make it to Derek's game. My mother would go straight to the game with Derek and Melissa. We made it to the science fair with 15 minutes to spare. I set up my display board with shaking hands, checking and rechecking my laptop to make sure the program would run smoothly. My presentation time slot came. I spoke to the 3 judges about machine learning, about pattern recognition, about the potential applications of predictive algorithms. I was nervous but thorough, and when I finished, one of the judges, a professor from Yale, told me it was one of the most impressive projects he had seen from a high school student. My father wasn't there. He had left halfway through my presentation, checking his watch every 30 seconds until he finally just stood up and walked out. He didn't say goodbye, didn't say good luck, just left. I won second place. The professor from Yale gave me his card and told me to stay in touch, that I had a real future in computer science if I wanted it. I clutched that card like a lifeline on the drive home, 3 hours in a taxi, because my father had taken our car and my mother wouldn't answer her phone to arrange a pickup. When I got home that evening, the house was full of people. Derek's entire lacrosse team, their parents, neighbors, family, friends, they were celebrating. Derek's team had won. He had scored the winning goal. There was a banner hanging in the dining room that said, "Congratulations, Derek." There was a cake. There were presents. I walked in carrying my second-place trophy, and my mother glanced at me briefly before turning back to her conversation. "Oh, Sophia, you're home. How did it go?" "Second place," I said. "That's nice, dear. Put the trophy in your room and come help serve cake." That was it. No congratulations. No questions about my presentation. No acknowledgement that I had spent half a year working toward this moment. Just an instruction to put away my trophy, my achievement, and make myself useful in celebrating Derek's success. I stood there in the doorway watching my family and their friends laugh and celebrate, and something small and hard formed in my chest. Not kite anger. Not kite hurt. Something else. Something that would grow over the years into a protective shell around my heart. That night, long after everyone had gone home and the house was quiet, I sat in my room and looked at the business card from the Yale professor. I made a decision. If my family wouldn't celebrate my achievements, I would simply stop expecting them to. I would achieve things anyway, but I would do it for myself, not for their approval. It should have been liberating. Instead, it felt like giving up on something I had desperately wanted to believe in. High school continued in much the same pattern. I excelled academically, taking every advanced placement course available, teaching myself programming languages in my spare time, winning awards in competitions that my family acknowledged with absent-minded praise before moving on to more important topics, like Derek's acceptance to Princeton, where my father and grandfather had gone, like Melissa's successful audition for the lead in the school musical, like the country club membership my mother was campaigning for. I threw myself into my studies with an intensity that worried my guidance counselor. She called me into her office during my junior year, her face creased with concern. "Sophia, I'm looking at your transcript and it's remarkable. Perfect GPA test scores in the 99th percentile, National Merit Scholar. But I'm concerned about balance. You're not involved in any extracurricular activities besides academic decathlon. No sports, no clubs, no social activities. Are you doing okay?" I wanted to tell her that I had learned not to bother with activities that required parental support or attendance. That every time I had joined something that needed parent volunteers or spectators, my parents had been too busy or had forgotten or had prioritized something else. That it was easier to focus on things I could do alone, things that didn't require anyone else to show up for me. Instead, I said, "I'm fine. I'm just very focused on academics." She didn't look convinced, but she didn't push. She just told me to consider joining something, anything to round out my college applications. I didn't tell her that I didn't need to round out my applications. I had already been contacted by MIT's admissions office after my performance at the Intel Science and Engineering Fair. They were very interested in me, the recruiter had said. Very interested. When the acceptance letter came in March of my senior year, I opened it alone in my room. Full scholarship. Invitation to their honors program. A personal note from the dean of the School of Engineering. I went downstairs to dinner that night with the letter in my hand, my heart pounding with a mixture of pride and hope. Maybe this would be big enough. Maybe this would finally make them see me. The family was already seated when I walked in. Derek was home from Princeton for spring break, and the conversation was dominated by his stories about fraternity parties and internship opportunities at his father's firm. "I have some news," I said during a lull in the conversation. My mother looked up from her plate. I got into MIT. Full scholarship." There was a brief pause. My father nodded. "That's good, Sophia. MIT is a fine school. It's one of the best engineering schools in the world," I said. My voice came out smaller than I intended. "And they offered me a full ride. 4 years, all expenses paid." "Well, that's fortunate," my mother said. "I suppose that means we won't have to pay for your education." That's a relief given how expensive Derek's Princeton tuition is. That was it. That was the entire response to the biggest achievement of my young life. Relief that they wouldn't have to pay for it. Derek at least tried to be supportive. "That's great, Soph. MIT is hardcore. You'll do well there." But even his encouragement felt hollow because he immediately launched into a story about his own academic achievements at Princeton, and the conversation moved on. Melissa, 16 and immersed in her own world of boyfriends and prom dresses, didn't even look up from her phone. I excused myself from the table and went back to my room. I put the acceptance letter in my desk drawer and closed it. Then I sat on my bed and cried for the first and last time over my family's inability to celebrate with me. After that night, I stopped crying about them. It seemed pointless. MIT was a revelation. For the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people who understood me. People who got excited about algorithms and code, who spent Friday nights debugging programs and Saturday mornings in the lab. People who didn't think I was weird for preferring Linux to social media or finding beauty in elegant mathematical proofs. I thrived there in a way I never had at home. I made friends, real friends, who valued intelligence and curiosity. I joined research projects and impressed my professors. I stayed on campus for most holidays because going home felt like stepping backward into a role that no longer fit. When I did go home, usually for Christmas or Thanksgiving, I felt like a stranger in my own house. The conversations my family had seemed trivial compared to the work I was doing. The priorities they valued felt hollow. And the way they treated me, with that odd combination of dismissal and resentment, became more pronounced. During Thanksgiving of my sophomore year, Melissa announced her engagement to Brandon Hartley, a junior hedge fund manager from a prominent Boston family. She was 19. The family erupted in celebration. My mother immediately began planning an elaborate wedding, talking about venues and designer dresses and invitation lists that included senators and CEOs. "Isn't 19 a bit young?" I asked carefully over dinner. The table went silent. My mother's eyes flashed with irritation. "Not everyone needs to spend their youth buried in books, Sophia," she said sharply. "Some women understand that the most important thing is securing a good marriage while they're still in their prime. I just meant that she has her whole life ahead of her. There's no rush." "That's easy for you to say," Melissa said. Her voice had a edge to it I didn't recognize. "You're so focused on being some kind of genius that you've completely forgotten how to be a woman. Do you even own a dress that isn't for a science conference?" Melissa, Derek said mildly, but he was smiling into his wine glass. "What?" "It's true. Sophia acts like she's superior to all of us because she goes to MIT and does computer stuff. But what's the point? She'll end up 35 and alone, married to her laptop, while the rest of us are actually living our lives." "That's enough," my father said, but his tone was more tired than reproachful. I put down my fork, my appetite gone. "I'm happy for you, Melissa. I hope you'll be very happy with Brandon. Don't patronize me," she snapped. "And don't come to the wedding if you're just going to judge me." I didn't respond. I just finished dinner in silence and left the next morning, catching an early bus back to Boston. I told them I had a project deadline. They didn't ask any questions. The pattern continued through the rest of college and into my graduate work. I completed my bachelor's degree in 3 years, then immediately started a master's program in computer science with a focus on artificial intelligence and sustainable systems. My thesis advisor, Dr. Elena Vasquez, became something of a mentor to me. She was brilliant, demanding, and one of the few people who pushed me to think bigger than just academic achievement. "You have real talent, Sophia," she told me during one of our meetings in her cluttered office. "But talent without vision is just wasted potential. What do you want to do with all this knowledge? What impact do you want to make?" I had never really thought about it in those terms. I had been so focused on achieving, on being good enough, on proving something to people who would never care, that I had never stopped to consider what I actually wanted to create. "I want to solve real problems," I said slowly. "I want to use technology to make things better. more efficient, more sustainable. Then stop thinking like a student and start thinking like an entrepreneur, she said. You're not going to change the world by writing papers that 6 people read. You need to build something. That conversation planted a seed. During my final year of graduate school, I began working on a project that combined my interests in AI and sustainability. The idea was to create predictive algorithms that could optimize energy usage in large buildings and industrial facilities, reducing waste and improving efficiency. It started as my thesis project, but it quickly became something more. By the time I graduated with my master's at 23, I had a working prototype and a handful of potential clients who were interested in beta testing the system. I also had student loan debt despite the scholarships, no real income, and a family who still had no idea what I actually did for a living. The first person I told about my business plans was Derek. He was doing well at his law firm in Manhattan, already making partner track at 26. We met for coffee in the city, and I explained my vision for what would eventually become Sustainable Systems Incorporated. He listened politely, asked a few questions, and then leaned back in his chair with the kind of smile that made my stomach sink. "Soph, I'm going to be honest with you because someone needs to be. This is a terrible idea." "Why?" "Because you have no business experience. You have no funding. You're a computer scientist trying to break into a market dominated by established companies with decades of relationships and billions in capital. You're going to spend the next 5 years struggling to get anyone to take you seriously, and then you're going to fail. And by the time you figure that out, you'll be almost 30 with nothing to show for it except debt and wasted time." "People said similar things to Steve Jobs," I said quietly. "You're not Steve Jobs. And this isn't the 90s. The tech bubble already burst. Nobody's looking for the next big thing anymore. They're looking for stability and proven track records. You don't have either. So what do you suggest I do?" "Get a real job. Microsoft is always hiring. Google. Apple. Any of them would take you with your degrees. Make good money, build some savings, find a nice guy, settle down. Stop trying to be someone you're not." I looked at my brother across the table, at this man who I had grown up with, who I had looked up to as a child, and I realized that he had no faith in me. Not just in my business idea, but in me as a person. He truly believed I was destined for mediocrity. "Thanks for the advice," I said. "I'll think about it." But I didn't think about it. I ignored it completely. I borrowed money from Dr. Vasquez, took out additional loans, and launched Sustainable Systems Incorporated. From a 12 by 12 office in Cambridge that smelled like mold and had unreliable electricity. The first 2 years were brutal. I worked 18-hour days, 7 days a week. I coded, pitched, network troubleshot, and occasionally slept on the office couch because going home seemed like wasted time. I lived on coffee, granola bars, and the kind of determined stubbornness that comes from wanting to prove everyone wrong. I didn't tell my family what I was doing. As far as they knew, I had gotten a job at some tech company after graduation. They didn't ask for details, and I didn't offer any. The breakthrough came in my 3rd year. A mid-sized pharmaceutical company in New Jersey agreed to install our system in one of their manufacturing facilities as a pilot program. Within 6 months, they had reduced their energy costs by 37%. The savings were significant enough that they installed the system in all 15 of their facilities and agreed to be a reference client. Other companies started calling. A hotel chain. A university system. A food processing conglomerate. The revenue started coming in, and suddenly I wasn't just surviving. I was building something real. By the time I was 28, Sustainable Systems Incorporated had 23 employees, offices in 3 cities, and annual revenue in the 8 figures. I had paid off all my loans, bought a modest condo in Cambridge, and finally felt like I could breathe without worrying about whether payroll would clear. I thought about telling my family, about showing them what I had built, but something held me back. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was self-protection. Or maybe I was testing them, waiting to see if they would ever ask, ever show genuine interest in my life beyond perfunctory questions at holiday dinners. They never did. During those years, I attended the expected family gatherings. Derek's wedding to Jennifer, a perfectly orchestrated affair at a country club in Greenwich with 300 guests and a price tag that could have funded a small village. Melissa's wedding to Brandon, even more elaborate, held at a private estate in the Hamptons with celebrities and politicians in attendance. At both weddings, I was the odd one out. The single woman in the corner making small talk with distant relatives while my siblings glowed at the center of attention. People would ask me what I did, and I would say I worked in tech. If they pressed for details, I would give vague answers about energy management systems. Most people's eyes glazed over, and they would excuse themselves to get more champagne. My family introduced me to people as their daughter or sister who worked with computers. The phrase "works with computers" became my identity in their world, a catch-all that implied I did something vaguely technical but ultimately unimportant. When Derek and Jennifer bought their penthouse on the Upper East Side, my mother gave tours of it to all her friends, bragging about the marble countertops and the view of Central Park. When Melissa and Brandon bought their estate in Connecticut, complete with tennis courts and a guest house, my father told everyone at the country club about his daughter's successful marriage. When I bought my first real apartment in Boston, a beautiful loft in the Seaport District with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor, I didn't even mention it. What was the point? They wouldn't come visit. They wouldn't care about the smart home system I had designed myself, or the rooftop garden where I grew herbs and vegetables. They would just see it as further evidence of my misguided priorities. The year I turned 30, Forbes published a profile on emerging tech companies to watch. Sustainable Systems Incorporated was featured prominently. The article mentioned our innovative approach to energy management, our impressive client list, and our recent expansion into European markets. There was a photo of me in my office looking professional and confident with the caption, "Sophia Williams, founder and CEO, is revolutionizing how major corporations think about energy efficiency." I didn't send the article to my family. I told myself it was because I didn't need their validation anymore. But the truth was more complicated. I was afraid of how they would react, afraid they would dismiss it as lucky timing or good PR, afraid they would find a way to make my success feel small. The article did generate attention, though. New clients reached out. Investors started calling. I hired a publicist to manage the media inquiries and a CFO to handle our increasingly complex finances. We moved into a larger office space, expanded our team, and opened offices in London and Frankfurt. By 32, I was running a company valued at just over $1 billion. On paper, I was successful beyond anything I had imagined when I started. In practice, I was exhausted, lonely, and increasingly aware that the gap between my life and my family's understanding of my life had become a chasm too wide to bridge. They still called occasionally. My mother would phone to remind me about family events or to gossip about people I had gone to high school with. Derek would text every few months with some article about tech regulation and a comment about how complicated my industry was becoming. Melissa would invite me to her charity luncheons and seem genuinely puzzled when I declined because of work obligations. None of them asked real questions. None of them wanted to know what I actually did all day, what challenges I faced, what successes I was proud of. I was still just Sophia, who worked with computers, who hadn't managed to find a husband, who was wasting her youth on a career that they didn't understand and therefore didn't value. The breaking point came slowly then, all at once. It started 6 months before the anniversary gala, when my mother called to tell me about the party plans. "It's going to be absolutely spectacular," she gushed. "We've booked the Plaza's grand ballroom. 300 guests. Victor Alvarez is catering. We have a 12-piece orchestra. It's going to be the event of the season." "That sounds lovely, Mom," I said absently. I was reviewing a contract while we talked, only half paying attention. "I'm so glad all my children will be there to celebrate with us. Derek is giving a toast, and Melissa is coordinating with the wedding planner. It's going to be perfect." "I'm looking forward to it," I said automatically. There was a pause. "You are coming, aren't you, Sophia?" "Of course. You sent me an invitation." "Yes, well, I wanted to make sure. I know how busy you are with your little company." "My little company." The phrase grated, but I let it pass. "I'll be there, Mom." "Good. And Sophia, please try to dress appropriately. This is a formal event. Perhaps you could ask Melissa for some fashion advice. I don't want you showing up in one of those dowdy business suits you always wear." I looked down at my Prada blazer and silk blouse, part of a wardrobe that cost more than most people's cars. "I'll do my best, Mom. And please, for the love of God, don't talk about computers all night. Try to be social. Try to be feminine. Maybe you'll meet someone. God knows you're not getting any younger." I was 34 years old. I had built a company from nothing. I had created jobs for hundreds of people. I had developed technology that was reducing carbon emissions across 4 continents. And my mother's primary concern was whether I would be feminine enough at her party. "I'll try to be on my best behavior," I said, and ended the call before she could offer any more advice. Over the following months, the family group chat that I usually muted became increasingly active with party planning details. Flower arrangements, seating charts, menu selections, photos of my mother's dress fittings, updates on Derek's toast preparation. I contributed nothing to these conversations. I simply agreed to show up and hoped that would be enough. 3 weeks before the party, my assistant Marcus mentioned that we had several European executives flying in for meetings the week of the gala. I had hired Marcus 2 years earlier as my personal assistant and head of security after a stalker incident involving a disgruntled former employee of a client company. He had quickly become indispensable, managing everything from my schedule to my travel to my personal safety with quiet efficiency. Should I try to reschedule the Geneva meetings? He asked. They conflict with your family event. I looked at the calendar at the careful blocks of time Marcus had allocated for what my family still thought was just a dinner party. No, I said. Keep the Geneva meetings. I'll make the anniversary party work around them. Are you sure? The timing will be very tight. I'm sure. It's just dinner with my family. I can manage a few hours. Marcus gave me one of his inscrutable looks, the kind that suggested he knew more than he was saying. But he simply nodded and went back to coordinating the logistics of international executives, private jets, and hotel suites. The week before the gala, my mother called again. Sophia, I've been reviewing the seating chart with the event planner, and we have a small issue. What kind of issue? Well, we're seating by family groups, obviously. Derek and Jennifer have their children with them at the family table. Melissa and Brandon are there as well. But you're alone, and it would look odd to have an empty seat next to you. It would draw attention to your situation. My situation? You're being single, she said with strained patience. It's awkward, Sophia. People will notice. They'll ask questions. Is there anyone you could bring? A friend, perhaps. A colleague. I don't think bringing a work colleague to your anniversary party is appropriate, Mom. Well, we need to solve this somehow. Maybe we should just seat you at a different table. There's a table with some of your father's business associates. Mostly men, but at least you'll have people to talk to about business things. The casual way she said it, as if my presence at my own family's table was negotiable, optional, potentially embarrassing. Something hot and sharp twisted in my chest. I'll sit wherever you want me to sit, Mom, I said quietly. Don't be like that, Sophia. I'm trying to make this work for everyone. You know how important this event is to your father and me. We just want everything to be perfect. Of course, I said. Perfect. After I hung up, I sat in my office for a long time, looking out at the Boston skyline. Marcus appeared in the doorway with my afternoon coffee, took one look at my face, and set it down without a word. The family event, he asked. They're debating whether to seat me at a different table because I don't have a date, I said. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Would you like me to arrange for someone to accompany you? I can find a perfectly respectable colleague or friend who could serve as a +1. I almost laughed. No. Thank you, Marcus, but no. I'm not going to hire a fake date to make my mother feel better about her seating chart. Then what would you like to do? I'm going to go to the party. I'm going to eat dinner. I'm going to congratulate my parents. And then I'm going to leave and get on with my life. Very well, Marcus said. And then more quietly, for what it's worth, I think your family is making a mistake. What do you mean? They don't see you, he said simply. And they don't realize what they're missing. It was possibly the most personal thing Marcus had ever said to me in 2 years of working together. I looked at him, this former Secret Service agent who had chosen to work for me instead of protecting dignitaries, who managed my life with military precision and unfailing discretion, who had somehow become one of the few people I trusted completely. Thank you, Marcus, I said. He nodded once and left me alone with my coffee and my thoughts. The night of the gala arrived with unseasonably warm weather for November. I spent the afternoon in video conferences with our European team, finalizing contracts and discussing expansion plans. By the time Marcus picked me up at 6 p.m., I had already worked a full day and was mentally exhausted. I had chosen my outfit carefully. A midnight blue Armani dress, elegant but not ostentatious. Simple diamond earrings. My grandmother's pearls, the only piece of family jewelry I truly valued because my grandmother had been the only family member who had encouraged my love of learning. I wore my hair up in a classic chignon and kept my makeup minimal. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a successful professional woman who looked exactly appropriate for a formal evening event. But I knew my mother would find something to criticize. The dress would be too plain. The jewelry too understated. My hair too severe. Something. Marcus drove us to the plaza in silence, which I appreciated. He had offered to wait in the car, but I told him to go home. I would call when I was ready to leave. Walking into the plaza felt like entering a different world. The grand ballroom had been transformed into a winter wonderland of white roses, crystal chandeliers, and ice sculptures that looked like frozen waterfalls. The guests were already arriving, women in designer gowns and men in tuxedos, the kind of elegant gathering that my parents excelled at hosting. I saw my mother immediately. She was holding court near the entrance, greeting guests in a champagne-colored Valentino gown that probably cost as much as a luxury car. She looked radiant, gracious, every inch the society matron celebrating a milestone anniversary. She saw me too. I watched her expression shift from welcoming hostess to something harder, more assessing. Her eyes swept over me from head to toe, and I saw the brief tightening around her mouth that meant she found me lacking in some way. But she was too well-bred to make a scene in front of her guests. She gave me a quick air kiss on each cheek, careful not to disturb her makeup, and gestured vaguely toward the ballroom. The family table is near the orchestra, Sophia. Do try not to arrive late for the toasts. That was all. No greeting. No genuine welcome. Just instructions. I made my way through the crowd, accepting champagne from a passing waiter, scanning the room for familiar faces. Most of the guests were my parents' friends and business associates, people I vaguely recognized from years of obligatory appearances at similar events. A few distant relatives waved, but no one approached to talk. I found the family table easily enough. It was positioned prominently near the front of the room with a clear view of the small stage where the orchestra was setting up. Derek and Jennifer were already seated, their 2 children with them. The kids were 4 and 6, dressed in miniature formal wear and looking uncomfortable under their parents' constant instructions to sit still and behave. Melissa and Brandon arrived shortly after I did, making an entrance that suggested they had timed it for maximum visibility. Melissa looked stunning in a rose-gold Oscar de la Renta gown, her blonde hair falling in perfect waves. Brandon was beside her in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his hand possessively on her lower back. Sophia, Melissa said, her voice dripping with false warmth. You actually made it. I told Mother you'd probably be too busy saving the world or whatever. Wouldn't miss it, I said evenly. Love the dress, Jennifer added with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Very. Practical. I didn't rise to the bait. I simply smiled and took my seat. The seat at the end of the table. Not quite part of the family circle, but close enough to maintain appearances. The dinner portion of the evening passed in a blur of courses I barely tasted and conversations I only half heard. My family laughed and told stories, performed the perfect image of a close-knit clan celebrating a beautiful milestone. I sat at my end of the table and felt like a ghost haunting someone else's life. Between the 3rd and 4th courses, Melissa leaned across the table toward me, her voice carrying just far enough to be heard by our section but not by other tables. So, Sophia, are you still working at that tech startup or whatever? What was it called again? I can never remember. Everyone at the table turned to look at me. I felt their eyes like weights. Sustainable Systems, I said quietly. And it's not a startup anymore. We've been operational for over 10 years. Right, Melissa said with a dismissive wave. But what exactly do you do there? I've tried to explain it to friends, but honestly, it's so technical. Something with computers and energy. We develop AI-powered systems for optimizing energy usage in large commercial and industrial facilities, I said. The explanation I had given 1,000 times. It reduces waste cuts, costs, and lowers carbon emissions. That's nice, Jennifer said in the tone people use when they're completely uninterested. So like you help companies save money on their electric bills? In a manner of speaking. How noble, Brandon said with a smirk. He had been drinking steadily throughout dinner and his face was flushed. Fighting climate change, 1 electric bill at a time. Very impressive. Derek laughed. Come on, Brandon. Give her credit. Sophia's very dedicated to her work. Even if none of us really understand what she does all day. I'd be happy to explain it if anyone was actually interested, I said. The silence that followed was pointed. The thing is, Sophia, Melissa said, leaning forward with what might have been genuine curiosity or might have been malice, I couldn't tell anymore. Don't you ever feel like you're missing out? Like you're 34 now. Most of your friends from high school are married with kids. You're still working these insane hours at a job that nobody's even heard of. Don't you want more from life? I want what I've built, I said carefully. I'm proud of my work. But is that enough, Jennifer asked. I mean, when you're 60 and alone is a successful career really going to keep you warm at night? That's a bit harsh, Derek said, but he was still smiling. I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm being realistic. Sophia has made her choices, and those choices have consequences. She chose work over family. Career over relationships. independence over partnership. And now she's at an age where those choices are becoming permanent. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. This wasn't casual family banter anymore. This was coordinated. They had discussed me before tonight. They had decided together what they thought about my life, my choices, my worth. I have a full life, I said quietly. I have work that matters to me. I have friends. I have purpose. But you don't have a family of your own, Melissa said. Her voice had taken on a pitying tone that made my skin crawl. And that's sad, Sophia. That's really sad. Because all the success in the world doesn't mean anything if you have no one to share it with. She has us, Derek said magnanimously. Although God knows she doesn't exactly make an effort to stay connected. That's not fair, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. I come to every family event I'm invited to. Barely, Jennifer muttered. You show up, you sit in the corner, you leave as soon as possible. You're physically present but emotionally absent. Maybe because every time I'm here I'm reminded that nothing I do is ever good enough for any of you. The words came out before I could stop them, sharp and honest, in a way I hadn't allowed myself to be in years. The table went quiet. Even the children stopped squirming and stared at me with wide eyes. That's not true, Derek said, but his voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? When have any of you ever asked about my work? Really asked with genuine interest. When have any of you celebrated my successes the way I've celebrated yours? When have any of you made me feel like my choices, my life, my achievements matter? We're not mind readers, Sophia Melissa said defensively. If you wanted us to know things, you should have told us. I did tell you. Over and over again. You just weren't listening. This is not the time or place for this conversation, Derek said firmly. He glanced around at nearby tables, checking if anyone was watching. This is Mom and Dad's anniversary party. Can we please not make a scene? You're right, I said. I stood up, my legs shaky but my voice steady. This isn't the right time. I should go. Sit down, Derek hissed. You're being dramatic. No, I'm being honest. And that's apparently something this family can't handle. I turned to leave, but Melissa's voice stopped me. This is exactly why you're alone, Sophia. You're so busy being the victim, so busy feeling sorry for yourself because we don't worship at the altar of your career that you've become insufferable to be around. Nobody wants to deal with your martyr complex. I turned back slowly. My martyr complex. Yes. Your constant need for validation. Your obsession with being acknowledged for every little thing you do. Grow up, Sophia. The world doesn't owe you applause for going to work every day. Something in me snapped. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a quiet, final breaking of the last thread of hope I had been holding on to. You're absolutely right, I said softly. The world doesn't owe me anything, and neither do you. Which is why I'm done expecting anything from any of you. That was when my parents arrived at the table. My father in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, looking every inch the powerful executive. My mother on his arm, her face tight with concern. What's going on here? My father asked quietly. People are starting to stare. Nothing, I said. I was just leaving. Leaving. My mother's voice rose slightly. You can't leave. We haven't even had the toasts yet. What will people think? I really don't care what people think, Mother. Her face hardened. Of course you don't. You never have. You've never cared about this family's reputation or standing. You've never cared about anything except your own selfish pursuits. Selfish, the word came out strangled. I'm selfish. Yes, my father said. His voice was calm, measured, the voice he used in boardrooms to deliver bad news. You are Sophia. You have been your entire life. You've taken everything this family has given you and thrown it back in our faces. The education we paid for, the opportunities we provided, the support we've offered. And you've repaid us by becoming this cold, difficult woman who thinks she's too good for her own family. I stared at him. At this man who had missed my science fair presentation, who had left my MIT graduation early, who had never once asked what I actually did for a living beyond the vague understanding that it involved computers. You paid for my education, I said slowly. I had a full scholarship to MIT. You didn't pay for a single credit. And what support have you offered? Name one time, one single time when you supported something I cared about. We've always supported you, my mother said. Her voice had taken on that particular edge that meant she was about to deliver what she thought was a necessary truth. But support doesn't mean enabling bad decision. We've watched you waste your 20s and early 30s on this ridiculous tech fantasy instead of building a real life. Instead of finding a husband. Instead of having children. Instead of doing anything that actually matters. My work matters, I said. To whom Melissa demanded. To you. Because I hate to break it to you, Sophia, but nobody else cares. Nobody even knows what you do. You work in some obscure tech niche that nobody's heard of, and you act like you're Steve Jobs. It's embarrassing. It is embarrassing, my mother agreed. Watching you year after year so confident in your choices, so certain you know better than everyone else. And where has it gotten you? You're 34, single, isolated, with nothing to show for it, but a job nobody understands and a condo you live in alone. Is that really the life you wanted, Sophia? Is that really success? I felt something shift inside me. Not anger exactly. Something colder. Something more final. You know what I said quietly? You're right. This is exactly the life I wanted. Because it's mine. Every choice I've made, every sacrifice, every late night and early morning and moment of doubt, it's all been for something I built. Something I created. Something that's real and meaningful and mine. It's meaningless, my father said flatly. It's a job, Sophia. Just a job. And when you're old and alone, you're going to realize that all those hours you spent chasing this fantasy could have been spent building something that actually matters. A family. A legacy. Something real. I have a legacy, I said. My voice was steady now, calm in a way that felt almost disconnected from my body. I have created something real. You just can't see it because you've never tried to look. Oh, here we go, Derek said with exaggerated weariness. The nobody understands me speech. Sophia, we're trying to help you. We're trying to save you from yourself. But you're so stubborn, so convinced you're right that you can't see what's obvious to everyone else. You're failing. You're failing at life. And instead of admitting it and making changes, you're doubling down on a path that's leading nowhere. If this is failure, I said quietly, then I'll take it over whatever you call success. That's enough, my mother said sharply. The conversations at nearby tables had stopped. People were watching us now, their expressions ranging from uncomfortable to gleefully scandalized. This is not the time or place for one of your tantrums, Sophia. You will sit down, you will be civil, and you will get through this evening with some semblance of grace. Do you understand me? No, I said simply. Excuse me. No, I don't understand. I don't understand how you can stand there and call me selfish when you've spent my entire life making it clear that nothing I do will ever be good enough for you. I don't understand how you can accuse me of being cold when you've shown me more coldness than I've ever shown anyone. And I don't understand how you can look at me and see failure when you've never once tried to see who I actually am. The ballroom had gone almost silent. The orchestra had stopped playing. 300 people were watching my family implode in real time. You want to know why I'm alone, I continued, my voice carrying across the sudden quiet. It's not because I'm unlovable. It's not because I'm too focused on work. It's because I've spent my entire life trying to earn love from people who were never going to give it to me. People who set conditions I could never meet because the point was for me to fail. People who needed someone to look down on so they could feel superior. And I'm done. I am done trying to be good enough for people who will never see my worth. My mother's face had gone white. How dare you speak to us this way? After everything we've done for you, after everything we've given you, you ungrateful, selfish, horrible girl. I'm not a girl, I said quietly. I'm 34 years old, and I'm done being treated like a disappointment in my own family. That was when my mother picked up her champagne glass. I saw her hand move, saw the calculation in her eyes, saw her decide that if I was going to embarrass her, she would make sure everyone knew whose fault it really was. The champagne hit me full in the face. The glass shattered against my shoulder. Cold liquid soaked through my dress, my hair dripped down my neck and onto the white carpet. The ballroom erupted in gasps. Someone screamed. The flash of phone cameras going off lit up the room like lightning. You are dead to this family, Sophia, my mother said, her voice carrying across the sudden chaos. From this moment forward, you are not my daughter. You have made your choice. You have chosen yourself over your family. And that is unforgivable. I stood there, champagne dripping from my hair, pieces of crystal catching in the fabric of my dress, and I felt the strangest sense of calm wash over me. You're right, I said softly. I have chosen myself. And you know what? I should have done it years ago. I turned to leave. Every step felt like shedding weight I had been carrying for decades. Behind me, I could hear the scandalized whispers starting my family, trying to control the damage, my mother's voice rising in indignation as she explained to nearby guests that I had always been difficult, always been ungrateful. I was almost to the door when Marcus's voice cut through the noise. Miss Williams. He was standing in the doorway, perfectly composed in his dark suit. Behind him, I could see hotel security, uncertain whether to intervene. The car is ready, Marcus said calmly. His voice carried across the room, professional and unhurried. And we should adjust the flight schedule for the Geneva meeting. The European executives are expecting us at 8 a.m. The whispers intensified. Geneva. European executives. What meeting? Thank you, Marcus, I said. Let's go. As I walked toward him, I saw confusion ripple through the crowd. People pulling out their phones, whispering questions to each other. My family stood at their table looking shell-shocked. Geneva Derek's voice followed me. What Geneva meeting? What is she talking about? I didn't answer. I just kept walking. Marcus held the door for me, and we walked out into the cool November night. The car was waiting at the curb, engine running. He opened the door for me, and I slid into the leather interior, grateful for the privacy and darkness. As Marcus pulled away from the plaza, I looked back one last time. I could see the glittering lights of the ballroom, the party continuing without me. My family probably already spinning the narrative about my behavior, about my dramatics, about how they had tried their best, but I had always been difficult. And for the first time in my life, I didn't care what story they told. Where to, miss? Williams, Marcus asked quietly. Home, I said. And then pack for Geneva. We have work to do. He nodded once and drove into the night. I sat in silence, watching the city lights blur past the window, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. The next morning, I woke up in my penthouse apartment overlooking the harbor. The champagne-soaked dress was in a trash bag by the door, destined for donation or disposal. I had showered for nearly an hour the night before, washing away not just the champagne but something deeper, something older. For the first time in my adult life, I had slept through the night. No anxiety dreams. No waking up at 3 a.m. to check emails. Just solid, dreamless sleep. I made coffee and stood at my window watching the sun rise over Boston Harbor, and I realized I felt light, unburdened, as if I had been carrying something heavy for so long that I had forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. My phone, which I had turned off immediately after Marcus drove me home, sat on my kitchen counter. I knew what would be waiting when I turned it on. The voicemails, the texts, the emails. The damage control, the outrage, the demands for explanations and apologies. I left it off and drank my coffee in peace. Around noon, Marcus arrived at my apartment. He took one look at me, at whatever he saw in my face, and simply nodded. I've taken the liberty of monitoring the situation, he said carefully. There's video footage circulating online. It's being shared widely. I expected that, I said calmly. The narrative is not what your family might have hoped, Marcus continued. Public opinion seems to be heavily in your favor. People are interested in learning more about who you are. And my family, scrambling, Marcus said. There might have been the slightest hint of satisfaction in his voice. Several media outlets have started looking into your company, your achievements. The discrepancy between who you actually are and who your family thought you were is becoming a story. I nodded slowly. I need you to do something for me. Of course. I need you to compile everything. Every article about my company. Every award. Every major contract. Every charitable foundation I've supported. Every innovation we've developed. Everything that proves I'm not just some woman who plays with computers. I can have that ready within an hour, Marcus said. What are you planning? I don't know yet, I said honestly. But whatever happens next, I want to face it with the full truth. No more hiding. No more downplaying. No more waiting for them to ask about my life. If they want to know who I am, they're going to find out. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. I'll get started immediately. He left, and I finally turned on my phone. De las 27 missed calls. 17 voicemails. Hundreds of texts and emails, all from my family. I started listening to the voicemails in chronological order. They were revealing in their progression. The first few from my father were stiff and uncomfortable. Sophia, we need to talk about what happened. Things got out of hand. Please call me back. Then my mother, not quite apologizing, but suggesting damage control. This has become a disaster, Sophia. We need to present a united front to the press. Call me immediately. Derek attempting to mediate. Look, everyone said things they didn't mean. Let's all just take a breath and figure out how to fix this. But by voicemail number 10, the tone had shifted dramatically. Derek again, his voice tight with confusion and something that might have been panic. Sophia, someone sent me a Forbes article from 3 years ago. About your company. What the hell is Sustainable Systems Incorporated? Why didn't you tell us you were running a $1 billion company? Then Melissa, her voice high and strained. I just Googled you. There are articles, lots of articles, about energy and AI and European contracts. Sophia, what is going on? Why did you let us think you were nobody? Jennifer attempting damage control. Sophia, honey, I think there's been a huge misunderstanding. We had no idea you were so successful. Please call us back so we can straighten this out. And finally, my mother voicemail number 17. Her voice was shaking, but I couldn't tell if it was from anger, fear, or something else. Sophia Marie Williams, you call me back right now. I don't know what game you're playing, but this family needs answers. How dare you make fools of us like this? I listened to all 17 voicemails. I read through the texts, which followed the same pattern, from concern to confusion to panic to accusation. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I called my publicist Rebecca Singh, a sharp woman in her 40s who had been handling my media relations for the past 2 years. Sophia, she answered on the first ring. I was hoping you'd call. I assume you've seen the video. I've heard about it, I said. What's the situation? Viral is an understatement. The video has been viewed over 50 million times across all platforms. It's trending on Twitter. There are think pieces being written about it as we speak. Family dynamics and success, the price of ambition. When your family doesn't support your dreams, it's everywhere. And the media, everyone wants to interview you. CNN, Good Morning America, The Today Show, Forbes, TechCrunch. The list goes on. There's massive interest in your story. Who you are, what you've built, why your family had no idea. It's a perfect storm of family drama and tech success. I took a deep breath. What do you recommend? Rebecca was quiet for a moment. Honestly, I think you should tell your story. On your terms. One major interview thoroughly prepared where you can control the narrative. Not to trash your family, but to simply tell the truth about who you are and what you've built. The public is sympathetic to you right now. People relate to feeling undervalued by their families. If you handle this right, you can turn this from a scandal into a platform. A platform for what? For whatever matters to you. Your company, your charitable work. Women in STEM. The importance of following your passion even when others don't understand it. You have the world's attention right now, Sophia. What do you want to say to them? I thought about it. About all the years of being dismissed, being overlooked, being told my work didn't matter. About the young women like me who might be sitting in similar family dinners right now being told their dreams were less important than conforming to expectations. I want to tell them it's okay to choose yourself, I said quietly. I want to tell them that success isn't about meeting other people's standards. It's about building a life that matters to you. Then let's make that happen, Rebecca said. I'll reach out to Diane Sawyer's team. Prime time special. 60 minutes. Unedited conversation. Does that work for you? Yes, I said. That works. Good. I'll set it up. And Sophia, for what it's worth, I think what you did took incredible courage. Not everyone has the strength to walk away from a toxic situation even when they should. After I hung up, I sat in my apartment for a long time thinking about what came next. My phone kept buzzing with new messages from my family, but I continued to ignore them. Over the next few days, the story continued to grow. Journalists started digging into my background. They found the MIT records, the Forbes profile, the Wall Street Journal article about Sustainable Systems Incorporated, IND is 11 and Tekken, being one of the fastest growing tech companies in the Northeast. The TechCrunch features about our innovations in energy management. The photos of me speaking at conferences, meeting with European executives, sitting on panels about AI and sustainability. They found the truth. Sophia Williams wasn't just someone who worked with computers. She was the founder and CEO of a $3 billion company revolutionizing clean energy management. She held patents. She had been named to multiple 40 under 40 lists. She had built hospitals in developing countries and funded clean water initiatives across 3 continents. And her family had no idea. The headlines were brutal for them. Billionaire CEO's family didn't know she existed. The Williams family's $3 billion blind spot. Tech founder Sophia Williams, the success story. Her family refused to see. Within 48 hours, my father's company issued a statement distancing themselves from his personal conduct. 2 of my mother's charity boards quietly asked for her resignation. Derek's law firm suggested he take an extended leave of absence after 3 major clients expressed concerns about his judgment and values. I watched it all unfold from the safety of my apartment, surrounded by Marcus and my core team, and I felt nothing but a strange sense of peace. On the fourth day, Rebecca called to confirm the interview with Diane Sawyer. "They're very interested," she said. "They want to do it as soon as possible while the story is still hot. Can you do this Friday?" "Yes," I said. "It'll be a full hour. Prime time. Diane wants to cover everything. Your childhood, your relationship with your family, your career, the events at the gala, what happens next. Are you ready for that level of exposure?" "I think so," I said. "I'm tired of hiding." The interview was scheduled for Friday evening at ABC's studios in Manhattan. I spent the days leading up to it working with Rebecca on preparation, thinking through what I wanted to say, how I wanted to present myself. "Don't think of this as defending yourself," Rebecca advised. "Think of it as telling your truth. You don't need to attack your family. You don't need to prove anything. Just be honest about what happened and why you made the choices you made." The morning of the interview, Marcus drove me to New York. We didn't talk much during the drive. There wasn't much to say. We both knew this interview would change everything one way or another. When we arrived at the studio, I was ushered into hair and makeup, then to a pre-interview with Diane's producers. They asked questions about what I was comfortable discussing, what areas were off limits, how I wanted to handle questions about my family. "I want to be honest," I told them, "but I don't want to destroy them. I just want people to understand what happened and why I made the choices I made." "That's a very mature approach," the producer said. "We'll structure the interview to give you space to tell your story without it becoming an attack session." Finally, it was time. I sat across from Diane Sawyer in a comfortable chair in a carefully lit studio, 2 cameras pointed at us, and took a deep breath. "Are you nervous?" Diane asked kindly before we began. "Terrified," I admitted. She smiled. "Good. That means you care. Just tell your truth, Sophia. That's all anyone can ask." The cameras started rolling. For 60 minutes, I told my story. I told her about growing up as the middle child who never quite fit the family mold. About the science fair my parents left early. About the MIT graduation they missed most of. About building my company from nothing while my family dismissed it as a hobby. I didn't trash them. I didn't need to. I simply told the truth about what it felt like to spend 34 years trying to earn love from people who had already decided I wasn't worth it. I told her about the anniversary gala, about the casual cruelty of being told I was a failure at life, about the champagne glass and the final rejection. And I told her why I had kept my success quiet for so long. "I think I was hoping that one day they would love me for who I was, not for what I had achieved," I said. My voice was steady, but my eyes were wet. I was hoping that if I just kept trying, kept showing up, kept being patient, they would eventually see me. But the truth is, they did see me. They saw exactly who I was. They just didn't value it. "And now," Diane asked gently, "where do you go from here?" "Forward," I said simply. "I go forward. I build the life I want to live. I surround myself with people who see my worth. And I stop waiting for approval from people who will never give it." "Do you think you'll reconcile with your family?" I thought about it carefully. "I don't know. Reconciliation requires change. Real change, not just damage control. If they're willing to do the work to understand who I am and what matters to me, then maybe. But I'm not holding my breath. And I'm not waiting for them anymore. I'm done putting my life on hold for people who never valued it in the first place." The interview aired 3 days later. 30 million people watched it. The response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from people who understood, who had their own stories of family rejection, who had been told they weren't good enough for being too ambitious, too independent, too different. The interview clips were shared millions of times. Think pieces appeared in major publications about family dynamics, toxic relationships, the pressure on women to choose between success and approval. And then came the offers. 3 major publishers wanted my story. Universities invited me to speak about women in technology, about following your passion, despite opposition about the importance of building a life on your own terms. The United Nations reached out about speaking on a panel about sustainable development and women's leadership. I accepted some offers, declined others, focused on what mattered to me. My company continued to grow. We opened new offices, hired new talent, secured new contracts. The publicity from the interview actually helped business. Companies wanted to work with us because they believed in what we were doing and respected the story behind it. But the most meaningful responses came from young women, high school students, college freshmen. Graduate students in STEM fields who felt out of place, who struggled with families that didn't understand their ambitions, who needed to know it was possible to choose yourself without being selfish. I started a foundation focused on supporting women in STEM from families that didn't understand or support their ambitions. Every month, I met with a new group of bright, ambitious, scared young women and told them my story. I showed them that it was possible to build something meaningful even when the people who were supposed to support you didn't. And I told them what I had learned the hard way: family is not about blood. It's about love, respect, and genuine care. And if you don't have that from the people you're related to, you have every right to create it with people who actually see you. 6 weeks after the interview, my family showed up at my office. All of them. My parents, Derek, Jennifer, Melissa, Brandon. They had somehow convinced security to let them into the building, though Marcus stopped them at my office door. I looked at them through the glass walls of my office. At these people who had raised me, shaped me, and spent my entire life making me feel like I was never enough. "Let them in," I told Marcus. They filed into my office looking uncomfortable and out of place among the modern furniture and the wall of screens displaying real-time data from our projects around the world. "Sophia," my father started. His voice was the one he used in boardrooms, attempting authority he no longer had with me. "We need to discuss this situation." "What situation?" "This media circus. This public humiliation. We need to present a united front as a family." I almost laughed. "A united front. That's what you came here for." "You've made your point," Derek said. He was trying for his lawyer voice, but it came out defensive. "You're successful. We get it. But you're dragging the family name through the mud. This needs to stop." "I'm dragging the family name through the mud," I kept my voice level. "I'm not the one who threw champagne at someone in public. I'm not the one who declared their daughter dead to the family. I didn't do any of this." "You did." "We were upset," my mother said. She dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, but they were dry. "We said things we didn't mean." "Didn't you?" I leaned back in my chair. "Because from where I'm sitting, you meant every word. You just didn't expect anyone to find out who I really was. You didn't expect consequences." "You lied to us," Melissa said suddenly. Her voice was sharp, accusatory. "You let us think you were nobody. You let us believe your company was some kind of joke. Why didn't you tell us?" "I did tell you," I said quietly. "Over and over again. I told you about my company. About the contracts, the innovations, the growth. You just weren't interested. You called it my hobby. My little computer thing. You never asked for details because you had already decided it didn't matter." "We didn't know," Jennifer said. She was trying for sympathetic, but there was calculation in her eyes. "If we had known you were so successful, we would have been supportive." And there it was. The truth laid bare. "That's exactly the problem," I said. "You would have been supportive if you knew I was rich and successful. But you should have been supportive regardless. You should have loved me for who I am, not for what I have." "We do love you," my mother insisted. "We're your family." "No," I said. "You're the people I'm related to." "But family is something different. Family is people who see you, who value you, who love you, even when you don't fit their expectations. You're not my family. You never have been." The room went silent. My father's face had gone red. Derek looked angry. Melissa was crying, but I suspected it was more from rage than sadness. "So that's it," my father stood up, his voice cold. "You're gonna throw away 34 years over one bad night." "No," I said. "You threw away 34 years over thousands of bad nights. Over every dismissal, every put-down, every time you made it clear that I would never be good enough. The gala wasn't the beginning. It was the end." "You're being selfish," Derek said. He had stood up too aggressive. "You're letting your ego destroy this family." My ego, I stood up then, and something in my movement made them all step back. "My ego is not the problem here. Your inability to see anyone's value beyond how they serve your image is the problem. And I'm done being collateral damage in your quest for the perfect family portrait. If you do this," my mother's voice was shaking now, but with anger, not sadness, "if you cut us off, you'll regret it. You'll be alone. You'll have all this money and success and no one to share it with." "I'm not alone," I said softly. "I have people who care about me. Real people. People who knew who I was before the world found out. People who valued me when I was nobody special in your eyes. I have a family. It's just not you. We're your blood," my father said. "Blood doesn't mean anything if it's not backed up by love and respect. And you've shown me neither." "We came here to make peace," Derek said. "To work this out. And you're throwing it back in our faces." "No," I said. You came here to manage the damage, to control the narrative, to convince me to play along with whatever story you've concocted to make yourselves look better. But I'm not interested in being part of your PR campaign. What do you want from us? Melissa demanded. An apology. Fine. We're sorry. We're sorry we hurt your feelings. We're sorry things got out of hand. Is that what you want to hear? I looked at her. At this woman I had grown up with, who I had once thought was my sister, and felt nothing but a distant sadness. I don't want anything from you, I said. That's what you don't understand. I don't need your apology. I don't need your acceptance. I don't need your love. Because all of those things were always conditional, and I'm done trying to meet conditions that were designed for me to fail. So what now? My father's voice was hard. You're just going to pretend we don't exist. No, I'm going to live my life. I'm going to continue building my company, supporting causes I believe in, surrounding myself with people who actually care about me. And you're going to have to live with the consequences of your choices. Not because I'm punishing you, but because this is what happens when you treat someone badly for long enough. Eventually, they stop hoping you'll change. You're making a mistake, my mother said. But her voice lacked conviction. Maybe I said, but it's my mistake to make. Just like it was your mistake to throw champagne at me in front of 300 people. We all have to live with our choices. They left after that. No dramatic pronouncements, no last-minute reconciliations. Just a quiet exit that felt more like an ending than any shouting match could have. Marcus closed the door behind them and looked at me with concern. Are you okay? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Was I okay? I had just definitively ended my relationship with my entire family. I was alone in a way I had never been before. But I wasn't alone. I was free. Yeah, I said. I'm okay. That was 6 months ago. In the time since my company has grown by another $2 billion in valuation, we've opened offices in 12 new countries. Our clean energy solutions are now being used by some of the largest corporations in the world. But more importantly, I've learned what family really means. It means Marcus, who has been with me for 5 years and who treats me with more respect and care than my biological family ever did. It means my leadership team, who celebrated my birthday last month with a surprise party and a donation to the children's hospital I support in my name. It means the friends I've made, the mentors I've found, the community I've built. My biological family has tried to reach out a few times. Carefully worded emails. LinkedIn messages. A letter from my mother that almost sounded genuine until the last paragraph, where she mentioned how proud she would be to be photographed with me at an upcoming gala. I don't respond. Not out of spite. Not out of anger. But because I've learned that some doors once closed should stay closed. The media attention has mostly died down, though I still get interview requests. I've accepted a few, always with the same message. You don't have to settle for conditional love. You don't have to prove your worth to people who have decided you have none. You have the right to build a life on your own terms and to surround yourself with people who celebrate who you are, not who they want you to be. I've started a foundation focused on supporting young women in STEM who come from families that don't understand or support their ambitions. Every month, I meet with a new group of bright, ambitious, scared young women who remind me of myself at their age. I tell them my story. I show them that it's possible to choose yourself without being selfish, to set boundaries without being cruel, to walk away from toxicity without guilt. And I tell them what I've learned: family is not about blood. It's about love, respect, and genuine care. And if you don't have that from the people you're related to, you have every right to create it with the people who actually see you. Do I miss them sometimes? My parents, my siblings? Honestly, no. I miss the idea of them. The family I always hoped we could be. But I don't miss the reality. The constant criticism, the casual cruelty, the feeling of never being enough. What I've gained is so much more valuable than what I've lost. I've gained peace, self-respect, the ability to look in the mirror and like the person looking back at me, the freedom to build a life that matters on my own terms. And I've learned that the best revenge isn't destruction. It's not making them pay for what they did. The best revenge is living well. It's being happy. It's proving every single day that you are right to choose yourself. So here's my question for you, and I really want to know. Have you ever had to choose between being yourself and being accepted by people who should love you unconditionally? Have you ever walked away from a toxic relationship even when it hurt? What did you learn? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Share your story, because I guarantee you're not alone. And if this resonated with you, if you've ever felt like you weren't enough for people who should have celebrated you, hit that like button and subscribe. Because we're building a community here of people who understand that self-worth isn't given by others. It's claimed by ourselves. And remember, you are not required to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. You are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to demand better. You are enough. Exactly as you are. And anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve a place in your life. I'm Sophia Williams. And I chose myself. What will you choose?